Balotelli, Aguero! Premier League champions 2016, Leicester City!
Hope to see you soon. Well done. Bye-bye.
Cazorla, Giroud again, Joe Wilson! It's Gerrard. That's a great shake! McCracken getting closer. To the centre. It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent! Van Persie arriving. Oh, what a goal! What a goal by Robin Van Persie!
Yes, guys, welcome back to SFeatleyTV. I wanted to play that just at the start. Because this is going to be a hard stream to do. Links in the chat. Anyone wants to come on, pay their respects. Anyone that makes any comment that I don't agree with will be permanently blocked. Straight up. I'll say this straight up, straight now. If there's any comments that I don't agree with, I don't care. You're not getting any warnings. You're getting permanently blocked. Right? Simple. Simple as that. So, Manny, how you doing?
Good, thanks. I mean, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late, but I joined as soon as I could. Had to run a few errands, you see.
Yeah, no worries, man. I think we'll start with tribute first. Run into the actual football stuff later. Because then it'll, like, at least then I can get off and then calm down. Because that's probably what's going to happen. Probably end up getting the ump. But the links in the chat, feel free to anyone who's come on have to say or pay their respects. So for those you don't know, so the Queen, well, we'll just quickly go through like some of her life. So like briefly, so in 1926, was the birth of Elizabeth, who wasn't supposed to exceed the throne at all, because of the abdication of Edward VIII, meant George, her father, became king, and it meant that it did mean that she was next in line for the throne after her father. Now, obviously, she was alive during the war, and for people that say that she doesn't know, like, how hard for people that like live on the streets, you gotta remember, right, during the war, right, she convinced her parents to let her join the armed forces. So she then had that relationship with the army before she became queen. Right, she joined the auxiliary force, the Home Front. Right, that's after being separated and moved to Windsor to escape the bombing of London, the London bombing and the Blitz. But yeah, they let her join the auxiliary force during the war and help out with the war effort and basically do her bit. And it was then in 2 years after the war, when she was on her 21st birthday, before she even became queen, she declared us that she would do whatever is necessary to do her duty and service to the country and to the well, it was the empire then, but the Commonwealth and yeah, and everything on towards that. And obviously, her father was suffering from lung cancer, and passed away in 1952, which meant obviously she was proclaimed queen. The coronation went till 1953. The actual proclamation we saw this morning wasn't actually televised at all. The actual coronation was, but not the proclamation. And then, so forth, she took the throne in 1952. And ever since then, she's just forever without the world. I'll give you an example. Like, she was the first monarch to visit Ireland in 100 years. After all the troubles that had happened between the UK and Ireland, it would never be possible. They thought it would never be possible for the monarch to turn up at in Ireland. It just wouldn't be possible. But yet they managed. Yet she managed to do that. She was just that independent, neutral. Because as much as people say anything, the royal family, when they become queen or king, they don't get a say in politics. They can't take sides in politics. They can't take sides on anything. They've got to stay in the middle. Right? They don't get their say in that. Right? And also they don't get power. They don't have power to go and invade a foreign nation or anything like that. Right? All the power is held within Parliament. Right? They're just there as a head of state and that constant figure that in times of crisis this country's looked to. In times of crisis, right? Everyone looked towards them in the pandemic. Everyone looked, right, when the Grenfell fire happened, right? They were the first ones to show up, right? And that was most of the royal family, to be fair. So there's been, and so she's been guiding sort of constant light for most people in this country, which is why when we found out what happened on Thursday, for a lot of people in this country, it's hit us hard. Very hard. Even though we knew she was ill, we knew it was coming to an end, it's still hard when it happens. It's still very hard. My only connection, I never met the Queen, but my only connection to it is that my father did close protection in the army, and he drove for the Queen in Ireland, right, when they had the troubles there. So, like, she was just an amazing human being that had the potential to bring positivity to any dark situation. For me, anyway. Always someone that you can turn to in no matter what. I mean, and that's why when we've had tributes from Paris, from Germany, from Australia, New Zealand, so many countries have done something, right, which shows how much of the world she touched and how much she meant to the world. And this is why if games did go ahead this weekend, I don't think I would have done a watch along. I don't think I would have done. I don't think it was right. So I probably wouldn't have done it. Right? And that's just me. People have their own decisions, they have their own decisions to make. But for me, it's not right. So it's still hard now. Manny, anything you want to say?
I think you've covered it perfectly. I also hope that everything that you've said will now serve to demolish a lot of these myths and misconceptions about Her Majesty and the opinions of people who believe that if she was a prisoner, it was a prisoner of her own device. No. She might have been born into her special status, but she never took it for granted. And that bit you said about how she convinced her father to let her serve in the military, that is another example of how, in many ways, the military do have their finger on the pulse of the nation and of humanity, even more than some of the parliamentarians who do their bit to divide a nation with their own incendiary ideas and rhetorics. Her Majesty was a uniter. Not a uniter, she was a unifier.
But then, to be fair, a lot of the politicians this week have been united.
Yes, and that is a reflection. That is a reflection, of course, of how she, of her own nature, as a unifier. And the way she conducted herself with dignity, even with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even with everything that went on in her own life, in her own country, within other areas of the Commonwealth, she made it very clear that she might have been primarily a queen of the United Kingdom, but she was also a sovereign of the Commonwealth and in many ways of the world. She was a global royal. And that is one of the reasons why she has so much love. And the more we learn about her, the more we
She
need
built
to
up
remember.
Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Let's remember that. The
Exactly.
Commonwealth started with 5 nations. By the end of it, it's now, I don't know how many nations are in it now.
Over 150. I'd say 170 at least. And
Nah, it's not that many.
but the more you, but the point is that the more you
54 independent countries, and they're all independent of themselves.
Right.
But the Commonwealth also supports them in that sense.
Yep. Exactly. So she was in many ways. Yeah, exactly. 56 member states. So I stand corrected. And
there's 56. There's 56 member states, but there's 54 independent ones.
Yes, exactly. She was in many ways a global statesman, a global sovereign. And the more we learn about her, the more we realize that she did a lot to try to dispel a lot of the myths of the royal family, that they never cared about what happened beyond their own 4 walls. Completely untrue. She saw it as her role to add definition, add substance to her role, and be that global peacekeeper, that global unifier, that person who moved away from the idea of colonizing certain countries. Whatever has happened, whatever did happen in the empire before her, she was just a part of the system that had been created, but she did try in her own way to make things a lot better. And that is how we should remember her.
And
We
to
should
be fair,
remember her. Yeah, we should remember her
a
for the
lot of
warmth and love that she
a
generated.
lot of that empire was created after the Civil War, right? Where they were then brought back in, but they had no power. They had no say, no power. So, if you want to look at anyone, look at the parliament who did it. Right? It's them, like, how can you blame someone who can't affect, you can't stop anything? Right? Because if she stopped something that would happen, if they stopped something back then, like, it would have been taken aside, and they can't be seen to do that. It's in the middle. They can't be on either side. Simple. Right? So they're just the head of state. That's all they are. So they're not like really like, yes, she's queen, but it's not like they completely reign over us. It's Parliament that really has the power over us. That affects our lives day to day. Right? The new king ain't gonna solve the cost of living crisis. Right?
No.
If something happens in a Commonwealth country, right, it'll be Parliament that sends aid to them. It won't be the king that sends aid. So, like, yeah. In the end, everyone's got their own opinion. But what I've seen some of this week has been disgusting. Right, it really shows the level of people. The real level of people. And some people that I thought I had respect for. You know? Wonder.
For me personally, what angered me a great deal was seeing a lot of friends of mine of Caribbean or Asian/Indian origin saying that this is now the time to start criticizing the monarchy, talking about the systems that they put in place long before Elizabeth even came into the picture, and say that now should be the time to abolish the monarchy because it does nothing for the people. And that,
it does bring back 2.2 billion into the economies, but there you go. I might want to bear that in mind. But
yeah, go ahead.
And we'll move on to this about football's postponed. My stance is you can't take one weekend out of your lives just to have games postponed. Just to give a lot of people in this country a time to grieve. You can't do that. Just one weekend. Right? If it has to be two, then two. But you can't do that. Right? You do it when you've got coronavirus. When there's coronavirus affecting the team, right? The amount of Arsenal fans were jumping up and down and saying he had no choice. right? But they cancelled all our games, right? So we have to have games off, but you can't do over this. Like,
I was having a chat with our Australian friend Steve-O, and he agreed with me that it was right for the Premier League to ban games this weekend. And we were basically talking about how protocol dictates that when it's the reigning monarch who has passed, this has to be done. Now, there have been some occasions when other members of the royal family have passed away and life went on with, sports games went on. And when the Queen Mother, Her Royal Highness the Queen Mother, passed away at the age of 101, sports games went ahead with a minute silence and a rendition of the national anthem. But it's the reigning monarch, and protocol dictates
it's the
that
reigning. That's the it's the reigning monarch.
it is the reigning monarch, and so there has to be a respect for protocol, and it's just the way it is. And many of those people who were complaining about how the Premier League disregarded the fans who had spent a great deal of money buying tickets and booking hotels to come all the way from different parts of the UK and overseas to watch some games, and would have every right to feel angry at their money not being refunded. It's just a reflection of how it's become a more selfish sort of ideal. The fact that these people do have money, in my opinion, to be able to reserve tickets and reserve hotels or book journeys or what have you. There are millions of hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people in the UK right now who this winter will have to face a choice between heating and eating because of the government's arrogant decision to nearly double the energy cap to £2,500.
Yep.
Some people might not even get to have heating or get to
That
enjoy
might be
eating.
me.
That's the thing. And so it's at times like this and circumstances like this when the government needs to be blamed, that people sometimes need to take a look at themselves and say, you know what? If I have to miss maybe one game or two, I don't have it all bad. Because in the words of the immortal Vera Lynn, we will meet again. I don't know where, I don't know when, but I know we will meet again some sunny day. Her Majesty loved that song very much, and she imbibed the spirit of that song in her coronavirus speech. What angers me is that it's so easy to blame the Queen, blame the royal family for everyone's problems, and have people make a decision that they're the ones who are responsible for our lot in life, without even looking at the fact that the politicians are the ones to blame.
They're the ones that got the power.
Yeah, they sell horses and deliver donkeys. They lie to people for a living. They're the ones who earn a decent taxpayer's salary. Put your anger on them, not the royal family. And if protocol can't be respected for 1 or 2 weeks, given the delicacy of the situation, where does that leave people? Now, I take a few points that some sports have made the decision to go ahead. For example, today is the first day of the cricket between England and South Africa because the first day was washed out, the second day was cancelled, and play is going ahead only for the 3 days, so it's going to be up to them to find a result. Because once they've technically started that, they couldn't just, not finish it. And rugby have made the decision to go ahead with their Premiership season starting today. The Great Long Run is also going ahead, but they've made it clear that it will be much more subdued and a lot more respectful. And the culture around rugby means that you won't see anything but a very respectful nature of the conduction of sport. But with football, sometimes you don't get that. With football, we still suffer from a slight hooliganism problem, which was at its height in the mid-'80s and even earlier than that. And it even reared its ugly head again. So there was going to be some concern about whether the national anthem would be respected, especially among some sections of fans who consider themselves anti-monarchy or not even British, but Irish but Irish by ancestry are not even willing to be a part of it. They might have used the occasion to disrespect that minute's silence. You just never know. Passions would have been running high. So I believe that the FA did the right thing. They absolutely did. And it will be it will be the responsibility of the clubs and the Premier League to make sure that for this special occasion, fans should get refunded. Hopefully.
I'm gonna read this, and you're probably gonna break your heart and this. It's a poem someone came up with. Philip came to me today, and it said it was time to go. I looked at him and smiled as I whispered that I know. I then turned and looked behind me and seen I was asleep. All my family were around me, and I could hear them weep. I gently touched each shoulder with Philip by my side. Then I turned away and walked with my angel guide. Philip held my hand as he led the way to a world where kings and queens are monarchs every day. I was given a crown to wear, or a halo known to be by some. The difference is up here, they are worn by everyone. I felt a sense of peace. My reign has seen its end. 70 years I have served my country as the people's friend. Thank you for the years, for all your time and love. Now I'm one of two again in our palace up above.
If it's any consolation, I think the knowledge that she had lived the most magnificent of lives and has now joined her husband in the heavens not very long after he departed, that is the best thing. Because sometimes it can be even more heart-wrenching for a person to contemplate going on, having lost their soulmate. If you feel up for it, sometimes you can, but we just never know what's going on. The image of her sitting alone in that cathedral, following COVID protocols to the letter, while those shameful politicians, including the now ex-Prime Minister, flouted rules at their own pleasure.
Let's not get
You now
into
get
them.
an idea.
Let's not get into them.
I won't.
They're not. They're not worth
but
it.
now you get an idea.
They're not worth it. I'm not letting you finish. Sorry.
I'm not going to mention them. I don't want to. No, I'm not going to talk about them.
I don't want to hear it. I'm not. It doesn't mean you can't make content, mate. It's, like, seriously. Like, you can still make content. Just do something else. Like, I hope you're okay. Probably Europa League will go ahead. Probably. Depends if we're playing at home, to be fair. See what they do then. That'll be Thursday. So beautiful. Stupid football's been called off. As sad as it is, she's died. At the end of the day, footballers, etc., didn't know. She said, "Want time off." Also, the timing of it is so short noticed. It's unbelievable. One day before most of the games, not our fans gonna have booked tickets. Well, I hear your point, mate, but this is just one weekend. I mean, the F1's on. I didn't want to do that either. They didn't. We got Solo, man. But yeah, okay. Europa League will probably go ahead. UEFA haven't come out with anything yet. It's off. Lukey, no, they haven't said anything about next week, so stop fucking assuming. Right? As usual, you start predicting things, you start calling out things that ain't happened yet. Right? At the moment, they've said this weekend only. Right? And if it's next weekend, then so. You know what? I'm not in the mood for football right now. Just not in the mood for it. Really, I'm not. Any sport whatsoever. Couldn't give a fuck about what Hammond's doing. I couldn't give a fuck about what anyone's doing. I wasn't gonna go. I couldn't even care. Does it look like I'm fine? This is stupid. I don't even know. Fuck's sake. Well, we don't know that yet because next week, the funeral is next Monday. Not this Monday, next Monday. So they could still sneak the weekend in, and then have the funeral on the Monday, and then everyone gets a day off. And then everyone will jump for joy then, because they get a day off. It's international break the week after. So fixtures are going to be a mess. Fixtures were a mess anyway, mate.
Exactly. With the World Cup in November, the fixtures were always going to be messed about. So it was a struggle to try to get a season done. But
yeah, but I wanted to do this.
I'm glad you did.
Look, I wanted to do this anyway. Let's talk something we can talk about actually, rather than Premier League or anything like that. I know it's a long time ago because it was the summer, but I didn't get a chance to talk about it. But the Lionesses winning the Euros. I know it's a long while since we've done that, and now the new season's is just about starting. But I want to know how big of if anyone's free, do come on as well. I want to know how big of an impact this could make to the English women's game in this country, because it can mean a massive thing. If we really invest in this, we could become as dominant as the Americans and take them on, properly. Because I mean, the way we played that tournament was brilliant. I think, as much as Germany were good, I'd always had that feeling like we were going to win that game. We were probably the better side on the night as well, right? But a bit like the Arsenal women, right? You can't trust the men to do it. Right, you can't trust the men to do it, so you got to get the women to do it. You know what I mean, bro? That's, Lionesses have got a manager that doesn't bottle it. Absolutely, man. Let's be honest, the reason most of these clubs probably agree for the game is because they're probably... Yeah, well, you know what, like Liverpool in a crisis, so they're probably thinking this is a great time for us. Arsenal are probably thinking, well, that means we can say we're top in October. Or September, sorry. because that'll probably last for about 2 seconds. But yeah, look, I want to talk about the Lionesses. Incredible achievement. I think they can go ahead next year and challenge for the World Cup, but it's going to be a big ask with the Americans there, obviously. What did you make of it, Manny?
Well, sadly, I didn't get a chance to see any of the games at the time. I would follow everything online.
I
and
saw
would
the last
remember-
game, to be fair.
Yeah, and I do remember being quite impressed with the performances of the team, even though.
I mean, our last result was 10-0 to Luxembourg.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's a sign of how well the squad performed that even though Wiegman named an unchanged 11 for practically every single match, every single squad player, whether it was Alex Greenwood or Jill Scott or Russo or Toon, they all came off the bench and performed their job magnificently. And it was terrific to see a coach who not only knew how to motivate her players, but who tactically got everything spot on. We've had managers who've taken England to the cusp of a title. Hope Powell, Mark Sampson, Phil Neville, only to end up not quite making it. And I also think of several legendary women's players, Rachel Yankee, Farrah Williams, Casey Stoney, and several others who never got to experience a tournament win. So it was wonderful for Jill Scott to say that they would never forget those legends who came before them.
Yeah,
And
that's the
to answer-
thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
To answer your question about whether or not this will lead to an uptick in in the fortunes of the women's game, that can only be really solved if more money will be invested into the game and the women will be paid at least much better on a par with the men. But also they need to be given a lot more exposure. Their games also need to be shown a lot more frequently. Whether it's on BBC Sport or even Sky or BT.
I think they're now they're on Sky, BT, BBC, or the FA Player.
That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
So I think you get to see every live game. Every live game.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful because I do remember in 2012, about 10 years ago, you really could only depend on the BBC to show the women's game screen.
And that would be a women's game.
Yeah. Whereas with the World Cup and the Euros for the men, yes, the BBC and ITV would screen it, but you also had the option of getting it on Sky Sports if you wanted. So hopefully with more...
Not the World Cup and the Euros.
Oh.
But other international friendlies, they did do.
Okay. That's good.
They've always said they wanted I think the British people said they'd rather the England internationals on ITV or BBC. Terrestrial television.
Yes.
Non-paid television, basically.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, as long as it wasn't... Because, I mean, of course, growing up, I would only watch it on ITV or BBC. I always liked ITV's coverage a lot better with Brian Moore before he left and Clive Tilsley took over. And then, of course, we lost Wellesby and Rosenthal and a few others. But anyway, in a nutshell, more money and more investment has to be put into the women's game. But we also need to make sure that they get a lot more exposure equivalent to that of the men.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see time and again, Stephen, that several sports in England also end up achieving some great things. We see England achieving great things in other sports. In 2019, let's not forget the cricket team won the World Cup. And that should also have made a lot more people fall in love with the game, especially after the emphasis that was put on improved limited overs performances following their disastrous 2015 exit. And yet, for all the talk about how cricket will always be England's summer game, it's the winter game, football, that still occupies more attention. You don't see too many people still wanting to get into cricket because of the misconception that it's more of a rich man's game. Those misconceptions need to
Mm,
be taken away.
to be fair, when I've watched it, I just find it boring. To be fair, I do give it a try, and I'm like, no, I gave the Ashes a try. I mean, I gave the World Cup a try when we actually won it. But then again, I was watching the final. I was watching the last moments of the final because we just watched. We just came back from the 2019 Grand Prix at Silverstone. We got back to the hotel and it was on.
Right.
So,
Right.
but like I do try and watch the Ashes, and I'm like falling asleep.
Right. So every sport, whether it's played
That's
by
probably because Australia's battering us. That's why.
yeah, I get that. But well, we've battered them too. I mean, ever since 2005, we've had our share of triumphs. Don't forget, and it was nice to
Well,
win
you have
that
like the
series.
Indian Super League, don't you? Don't you?
Oh, the Indian Premier League.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't watch any of that rubbish.
Oh, okay.
I don't watch that rubbish.
I thought that's
I
where it's
can't
at.
be bothered. Yeah, I can't be bothered with that nonsense. I mean, if you give me a choice between watching English limited overs cricket and the IPL, I choose the English stuff because you won't get any of this this glitz and glamour which has been introduced. No need for
The
that
thing,
nonsense.
the thing is as well is that like it just takes its time with things. Like
Yeah,
it takes time from when a batsman gets knocked out from the next one to come along. Like so that's where it just gets boring. So
I get that, but of course, they prepare for that by making sure that the next batsman to come in will be padded up and ready just in case. But I don't want to segue too far. The idea is that more and more money has to be invested into sporting development, so that every single
of
sport,
course,
including women's football, if
but
people
it needs to
value
be
women's
invested by it needs to be invested by every club as well, not just
agreed completely.
the FA, but every club like Man United are investing in it now. I believe Arsenal, we already know, have been putting money in it since way before the way before the Women's Super League came along. Man City, obviously, when WSL came along, put money in it. Chelsea put money in it. I think Liverpool are starting to put money in it because they got promoted, I believe. So yeah, Birmingham, I think it put some money. I think it probably needs to put money in it as well. Because at the moment, between you got Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United on their own level, and everyone else is shit. And it needs them to up their game, right? And then it will attract more people, more players coming from all over the place to play in the WSL because it's the competition to be at, like the Premier League, right? And that's where you get more exposure and then like even more revenue.
Exactly.
But also, what it needs also, yeah, like I said, is also it needs fans turning up at the stadiums as well. I
Absolutely.
mean, that
Absolutely.
£10 a ticket is going to make so much revenue, but it's not going to make the amount of money it's going to need. As much as people take £10 a ticket, they're gonna have to up the ticket prices to £30 a ticket, £40 a ticket to make a difference, game by game, so they can invest further into the sport.
Agreed, but having said that, how much would an average Premier ticket cost to watch a Premier League match at Arsenal, for instance?
70-80 quid.
That's more
So
than
like I'm
double than what.
saying,
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is it's 7 times cheaper to get a ticket for the women's game. So what I'm saying is that at least make it double, half, 2 times as more expensive, so that it's somewhere to start. And then hopefully it just brings with more exposure, with better players coming in, right? With the teams doing better because they're bringing better players in, right? There's more attraction to it. So because if you put ticket prices at the moment near the same, like £20 less than a normal ticket at Arsenal, no one's going to turn up. No one's going to turn up. I'm telling you now. Right? So, yeah. Simple.
But then here's the thing. I remember studying in America for several years. I was there, in fact, for 5 years doing 2 master's degrees.
Funeral will take place at 11 a.m. on Monday, September 19th at Westminster Abbey. What? Nah, that'll be done at Windsor, mate. They said they're taking him. They're taking her to Windsor to be buried next to Prince Philip.
Yeah.
That must. They're saying it'll be. They're taking her to Westminster on Wednesday, so people can go around and pay their respects, their last respects, and say their last goodbyes to the Queen, right? And then I believe they're taking her to Windsor to be buried next to her husband, and I believe also her father is there, buried there as well. So I believe you've got the right date. You might even have the right time, but I think the place is at Windsor's nearest abbey or church. But there you go. I haven't seen any confirmation yet, so because I don't usually get any confirmation until probably after the streams.
I'm checking BBC right now. I believe the BBC has confirmed it.
So why would they be? They announced. So the Independent. Oh, it's a state funeral.
Yes.
It's a state funeral. So everyone in the state turns up. Like, then you'll probably have another separate funeral at Windsor. And then she'll be buried.
Yes.
That's probably what's happening. Right.
So where exactly? What I mean, I was interrupted. I think I lost my train of thought. Oh man. But yeah, I was just saying that I was in America for 5 years, and one thing which I can tell you is that when it comes to sports teams over there, nothing succeeds like success. So if a team were to win the national/World Series championship, be it in ice hockey, basketball, American football, or baseball, and especially if it's an unfancied team, you can bet that there will be a lot more investment poured into that team because that team has that success behind it. And although I know that we've seen that success in other sports for England hasn't really translated into that level of in that much level of investment and effort yet. It's only a matter of time before people start to sit up and realize that it has to be done. I mean, whether it was the 2019 Cricket World Cup win or the 2003 Men's Rugby World Cup win or anything, people need to start sitting up and take notice. But it's just the government sometimes that doesn't bother.
God rest the soul. What a ways when the Queen was. That aside, why is rugby? No foot. Yeah, mate, I've said every sport should be cancelled. F1, rugby, rugby league, cricket, all of it. Epsom's been cancelled. The racing, horse racing, which is one of her greatest loves. It'd be a lot better having it in English League showing respect to the Queen before the game, cancelling it altogether. Yes. Defo made the right decision. Looks like I have someone supporting us on this one. Someone else supporting me on this one. And cancelling football. Looks like our next league match will be used. Bring it on. Well, we don't know what's happening next week yet. So we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, we're gonna wrap up there, guys, because this has been difficult to do. So I'm gonna stop there. I believe, Connor, it is. I think UEFA. I haven't said anything yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Maybe they leave it down to the decision of the football clubs. I don't know. But yeah. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Big up to everyone that's tuned in and joined in. Respect to all the comments. Yeah, we're back. Don't know when I'll be back with a stream on here tomorrow. I don't know. No, I won't be here tomorrow. I'll be here on Monday. I'll be doing something on Monday. Some sort of stream, I don't know. Maybe an Arsenal gossip column, maybe. But until then, stay there. Stay well, stay safe. And see you later.